heat mats safe? I get asked this all the time, especially by new owners or people trying to set up their reptile tank. Now this has always perplexed me because in all 9 years of having reptiles and having heat mats, I've never experienced anything bad with a heat mat. And people are like, oh, I've heard they can pose fire risks. So I did some research into this and I whittled it down to 4 main reasons that they may pose a fire risk. Number 1, faulty. If they're faulty, if they're damaged, if they're not working properly, don't use them. Number 2, if they're just a bad heat mat. So you go on eBay, you type in reptile heat mat, loads and loads of results come up. So you want like just your best deal. You go lowest price first, you go buy it now, and what do you get? Loads of really cheap heat mats. That's great, right? No. Most of these come from countries in Asia, and a lot of the time they're not actually made properly or safely. There's a whole article in this and I'll put a link in the description below. But please buy from a decent company that has been doing this for years, specifically for reptiles and maybe amphibians that know what they're doing. A good place to start is Habitat. The third reason is wrong installation. This is a massive problem when you're using a glass tank. So if you get just a glass tank like an aquarium or something, you stick your heat mat on the bottom of the tank, you put it back down, say it's on your desk. There's no airflow between the heat mat and your desk, and that's where the problem is. If you get a tank like an Exoterra tank, they're lifted up a little bit, so there is a gap between the heat mat and whatever platform your tank is on. So if you want to overcome this, you don't have an Exoterra tank or any tank that's like that, just put something in each corner of your tank so it is lifted a bit, and that should resolve your problem. I get asked a lot, what do you do in cases of wooden vivariums? I always put my heat mat inside. I don't think the heat would travel through the wood anyway. And with the faunariums, the plastic ones, once again, I stick it on the outside of the tank. Now the fourth reason they may be a problem is if you put them on the wrong kind of container or tank. Don't go out and buy a generic plastic tank that is really cheap and may just melt under the heat of your heat mat. Things may melt, may crack, they may release toxic fumes. So for me, I know it's saying, oh, buy from expensive brands. Buy from somewhere who have designed their tanks specifically for the use of reptiles or amphibians, and they know that heat is going to be used. If you go and watch the Exoterra advert on their channel for their terrariums, like you're sold straight away. You're like, okay, you know what you're doing. You have designed this purposely for reptiles and amphibians. Fair enough. So although it can be tempting to cut corners, get a cheap box, a cheap heat mat, this is where the problems lie. And this is probably where the stories come from when people are like, don't use a heat mat, that like set my Gecko on fire. And you're like, did you buy a decent one though? Did you follow all the rules? Did you install it correctly? These are all little things that if you don't do correctly can lead to a bit of a disaster. So anyway, I hope this video has helped, and thank you very much for watching this episode of FAQ Fridays.